She got into a car with a couple. There was even a child in the back. It looked safe. Normal. The kind of situation you don't question twice. But that decision didn't cost her a few hours. It cost her 7 years. And what makes this story worse? She had moments where she could have walked away. And she didn't. It was 1977, and for Colleen Stan, that day wasn't supposed to be anything unusual. She was just trying to get to a friend's birthday party, standing by the side of the road, waiting for someone to stop. Hitchhiking wasn't new to her. She had done it before, enough times that the process felt familiar, cars passing, a few slowing down, most continuing without even looking. Then one finally stopped. She stepped closer, careful but not overly cautious, and looked inside. A man was driving, a woman sat beside him, and in the back there was a small child, quiet, just watching. That detail mattered more than anything else. It shifted the situation in her mind from uncertain to safe, even though nothing had really changed. They spoke briefly. Where she was going, how far, simple things that didn't raise any concern. The kind of exchange that happens quickly, almost automatically, because both sides already know how it works. She hesitated, but only for a moment. Not long enough to walk away, just enough to feel it, that small pause where something doesn't fully settle, but you move past it anyway. Then she got in. At first, everything followed the same pattern she expected. Light conversation, long stretches of quiet, the road ahead mostly empty, nothing that forced her to stay alert. And slowly, without noticing it clearly, she relaxed. That's the part people underestimate. Nothing breaks all at once. There's no clear line where it turns from normal into something else. It shifts in small steps, almost quietly, until you're already inside a situation you didn't plan to be in. The first sign was just a turn. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a direction that didn't quite match where she thought they were going. She noticed it, but she didn't say anything. It didn't feel strong enough to question out loud. Then another turn. The road narrowed. Fewer cars. Less movement around them. Now the feeling was harder to ignore, but by then the moment to react had already started slipping away. She looked outside, trying to recognize something, to place herself somewhere familiar, but nothing matched. And that uncertainty kept growing. When the car finally slowed down, it wasn't because they had reached a destination. It just stopped. For a second, everything stayed quiet, like the moment stretched longer than it should have. Then the man opened his door and stepped out. There was no rush in the way he moved, no visible tension, nothing that looked like panic. If anything, he seemed completely in control, as if this was just the next step in something already decided. He walked around the car and opened her door. "Get out." It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. And somehow, that made it worse. She didn't react immediately, not because she was refusing, but because it took a second for the situation to fully register. Up to that point, everything had still felt reversible, like something she could step out of if she chose the right moment. But that moment was gone. He reached in, not violently, just enough to make it clear that this wasn't a request. So she stepped out. Behind them, the road was empty. No cars, no movement, nothing that would interrupt what was happening. He guided her away from the vehicle, slowly, without forcing her, but with just enough control that she followed. And with every step, it became clearer. This wasn't something she could talk her way out of. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Whatever this was, it had already started long before she got into that car. What stood out later wasn't just what he did, but how controlled he was the entire time, because nothing in his movements suggested panic or improvisation, and that made everything feel planned rather than sudden. He took her a short distance away from the road, far enough that no passing car would notice them, and when he stopped, it didn't feel random, it felt chosen. Colleen tried to say something, anything that might slow this down, but the words came out uncertain, and before she could even continue, he calmly cut in and redirected her without raising his voice. He didn't threaten her. He didn't need to. The way he spoke made it clear that refusing wasn't part of this anymore. Then he handed her something and told her to put it on, and although she didn't understand what it was at first, that confusion disappeared the moment it covered her head and her vision was gone completely. Not partial. Gone. Sound shifted with it, becoming dull and harder to place, and suddenly she couldn't rely on anything around her to understand where she was or what direction they were moving in. He guided her back toward the car, and without being able to see, every step felt unstable, like she could misjudge distance or lose balance at any moment, but stopping didn't feel safer either. When he opened the door and told her to get inside, she didn't hesitate, not because she trusted him, but because by then it was clear that resisting would only make things worse in ways she couldn't predict. The car started moving again. And this time, everything felt different. Without sight, time stretched, distance lost meaning, and even simple turns became impossible to track in any reliable way. She tried to count at first, holding on to anything that might give her some control, but the longer it went on, the harder it became to stay focused, until even that started slipping. Then the car stopped. The engine cut. Silence. He took her out and led her forward, and even without seeing anything, the change in space and air made one thing clear. This wasn't temporary. He took her inside, and the first thing she noticed wasn't what she saw, it was how everything sounded different, like the space around her was smaller, tighter, closing in. He didn't say much. Just told her where to step, where to stop. Nothing extra. After a few seconds, he told her to lie down. That's where it started to feel real. Up to that point, it still had that strange feeling that maybe this would stop, like something could interrupt it, like it hadn't fully crossed the line yet. But this felt like it had already gone too far. She reached out before moving, just to understand what was there, and what she felt didn't match anything normal. It was solid, enclosed, and smaller than she expected. Too small. She paused. Just for a second. Then he repeated it, same tone, same calm voice, like nothing about this situation required urgency. So she got in. At first, it was just uncomfortable. Then it wasn't. Her shoulders pressed against the sides, her arms didn't have space to move properly, and even trying to adjust slightly made it obvious there wasn't room for it. Then he closed it. No slam. No force. Just closed. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't being held in a room. She was inside something. Something meant to keep her there. She tried to move, just a little, testing it, seeing if there was any give, but there wasn't. Not enough to matter. Not enough to change anything. Her breathing picked up without her meaning to, and the more she noticed it, the worse it got, because there was nothing around her to focus on, nothing to pull her out of it. Just that space. Close. Still. She pushed once, not even trying to escape, just checking. Nothing moved. Everything stayed exactly the same. And that's when something changed in her. Because up until then, there was still that part of her expecting this to stop, expecting something to break the pattern. But inside that space, that expectation didn't hold. It didn't snap. It just disappeared. And what replaced it wasn't panic. Not the way people think. It was quieter than that. Something else starting to take over. Something that would keep her alive. Time didn't feel the same after that. It stopped moving in a way she could track, because there was no clear start or end to anything, just periods of being inside that space, then being taken out, then back again. At first, she tried to hold on to structure. Counting. Guessing how long she had been there. Trying to connect one moment to the next so it didn't all blur together. But it didn't work for long. Too many gaps. Too many unknowns. And after a while, even that effort started to fade, because it didn't change anything. He controlled when she came out. He controlled how long she stayed inside. And more than that, he controlled what each moment meant. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he didn't. And that difference mattered more than anything else, because silence became something she had to pay attention to just as much as his voice. When he did talk, it wasn't random. He gave instructions. Simple ones. Clear ones. The kind that didn't leave space for interpretation. And over time, following them became automatic, not because she trusted him, but because it reduced uncertainty, and uncertainty had become the worst part of everything. There were moments when she was outside the box, able to move a little, to breathe differently, to feel space again, but those moments didn't feel like freedom. They felt temporary. Like something that could be taken away at any second. And it always was. That's how the pattern formed. Not all at once. Slowly. Step by step. The more she followed what he said, the more predictable things became, and that predictability started to feel like safety, even though nothing about the situation actually was. That shift was small. But it mattered. Because it changed how she reacted. Instead of thinking about escape every second, she started thinking about how to get through the next moment without making things worse. And that's where control really takes hold. Not when someone is physically overpowered. But when their focus changes. From getting out to surviving what's happening right now. And once that shift happens, everything else becomes easier for the person in control. She understood that on some level, even if she couldn't fully explain it. So she adapted. Not because she accepted it, but because she had to. After a while, things stopped feeling like they were changing. Not because they got easier, but because they became predictable in a way she could finally follow. She knew when he would come. She knew what he expected. And she learned quickly that the less she resisted, the less things escalated. That didn't make it safe. It just made it survivable. There were moments when she was outside, when she could see again, when she could move, and from the outside, those moments might have looked like a chance to run. But they didn't feel like that. By then, everything had shifted. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everything she believed could happen if she made the wrong move. So she stayed. Not because she wanted to. Not because she trusted him. But because at that point, staying felt like the only option that didn't make things worse. That went on for years. Until one day, it stopped. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just ended. She walked away. And when people heard the story later, the question always sounded the same. Why didn't she leave sooner? But from where she was. That wasn't a simple decision.